The leather of his worn work boots scraped against the polished marble floor of the executive suite, and Marcus Williams knew he didn't belong here. Not in this world of crystal chandeliers, mahogany desks, and people who probably spent more on their morning coffee than he made in a week. But life had a funny way of putting you exactly where you never expected to be, and right now, life had placed him on his knees in front of the most intimidating woman he'd ever seen, holding her broken designer heel in his calloused hands while she looked down at him with eyes that could freeze fire or melt ice. He couldn't quite tell which. What neither of them knew in that moment was that this simple act of fixing a broken shoe would shatter both their carefully constructed walls and change everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and what it truly means to let someone in. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how Marcus ended up in that office, we need to go back to the beginning, to a Tuesday morning that started like any other, with cold coffee, a daughter who refused to eat her breakfast, and a text message that would alter the course of his entire life. Marcus had been working as a maintenance technician at Sterling Enterprises for exactly 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. He knew the exact count because he marked each day on the calendar hanging in his cramped apartment, a visual reminder of how long he'd managed to keep this job, how long he'd been able to provide stability for his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The jobs before this one hadn't lasted. Not because Marcus wasn't good at what he did, but because life kept throwing curveballs that he couldn't dodge. A sick daughter meant missed work. Missed work meant write-ups. Write-ups meant termination. It was a cycle he knew too well, one that had left him questioning everything about himself as a father, as a man, as a human being trying his best in a world that didn't seem to care about his best. That Tuesday morning, Lily had been particularly difficult. She'd pushed her cereal around her bowl, her small face scrunched into an expression that reminded him so much of her mother that it physically hurt. Sarah had been gone for 5 years now, taken by a drunk driver who walked away without a scratch while Marcus's entire world shattered into a million pieces. He'd had to learn how to braid hair from YouTube tutorials, how to answer questions about puberty that made his face burn red, how to be both mother and father to a little girl who deserved so much more than he felt capable of giving. "Daddy, do you think Mommy can see me from heaven?" Lily had asked that morning, her spoon hovering over the soggy cereal, her eyes the same honey brown that Sarah's had been. Marcus had knelt down beside her, ignoring the fact that he was already running late, ignoring the text from his supervisor asking where he was. "Baby girl, your mommy isn't just watching you from heaven. She's right here." He'd placed his hand over her small chest. "She's in every beat of your heart. She's in your laugh, in your smile, in the way you scrunch your nose when you're thinking really hard. She never left you, Lily. She never could." Lily had finally eaten her breakfast after that, and Marcus had rushed to work with his heart heavy and his mind elsewhere, which is probably why he didn't notice the memo about the CEO's office needing emergency maintenance until his supervisor, Frank, grabbed him by the shoulder and shoved him toward the private elevator that only went to the top floor. "Williams, there's a situation upstairs. The big boss needs something fixed immediately. Don't ask questions, just go. And for the love of everything holy, don't screw this up. None of us have ever actually been up there. This is your chance to make an impression." Marcus had wanted to ask what needed fixing, wanted to prepare himself, wanted to at least splash some water on his face and make sure he didn't have coffee stains on his uniform. But Frank was already walking away, and the elevator doors were opening, and suddenly Marcus found himself ascending to a floor he'd only heard whispers about. The top floor of Sterling Enterprises was everything he'd expected and nothing he was prepared for. The silence hit him first, a weighted quiet that felt almost sacred. Then the view, floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the entire city sprawling beneath them, a reminder of just how high above his normal life he currently stood. And then he saw her. Victoria Sterling stood in the center of her office like a queen surveying her kingdom. Her white skin seemed to glow in the natural light streaming through the windows, flawless and ethereal. Her hair, long and silky, cascaded down her back in waves of deep chestnut that caught the light and shimmered with every subtle movement. She wore a tailored black dress that hugged her perfect figure, the kind of understated elegance that whispered of old money and refined taste. But it was her eyes that caught Marcus and held him captive, ice blue and sharp enough to cut, currently directed at the designer heel in her hand like it had personally betrayed her. "You're the maintenance person?" Her voice was cool, controlled, but Marcus detected something underneath, a frustration that seemed to go beyond a broken shoe. "Yes, ma'am. Marcus Williams. I was told there was an emergency." Victoria's perfect lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "An emergency? Yes, I suppose that's what we're calling this." She held up the heel, and Marcus could see where it had snapped clean off. "I have a board meeting in 45 minutes. A board meeting that will determine the future of this company. And I am currently unable to walk without looking like a wounded gazelle." Marcus approached slowly, taking the heel from her extended hand. Their fingers brushed briefly, and he felt something like electricity shoot up his arm. He ignored it, focusing instead on the shoe, turning it over in his hands, examining the damage. It was fixable. "Barely. I can repair this," he said, already pulling his small toolkit from his belt. "It won't be pretty from underneath, but no one looks at the bottom of shoes, right?" Victoria raised one perfect eyebrow. "You'd be surprised what people in my position notice, Mr. Williams." And that's when Marcus did something that surprised them both. He laughed. Not a nervous chuckle or an awkward attempt at humor, but a genuine laugh that echoed off the expensive walls of her office. "With all due respect, Miss Sterling, if the people in your board meeting are spending their time examining the underside of your shoes instead of listening to whatever important business stuff you're discussing, then maybe the real problem isn't your heel." The silence that followed his words was deafening. Marcus immediately regretted everything. This was it. This was how he lost another job. His supervisor had told him not to screw up, and here he was, less than 5 minutes in, making jokes to the CEO like they were old friends at a bar. He braced himself for the icy dismissal, for the call to security, for the end of the stability he'd worked so hard to build. But instead, something extraordinary happened. Victoria Sterling, the ice queen of the business world, the woman whose reputation for ruthlessness was legendary, laughed. It was a small sound at first, almost surprised, as if the laugh had escaped without her permission. But then it grew, genuine and warm, transforming her severe beauty into something breathtaking. "Mr. Williams, do you have any idea how long it's been since someone spoke to me like that?" Marcus looked up from where he'd begun working on her shoe. "Like what?" "Like a normal person?" "Exactly like a normal person." She moved to sit on the edge of her desk, an informal position that seemed completely out of character for everything he'd heard about her. "Everyone around me measures their words. Calculates every sentence. Tells me what they think I want to hear rather than what I need to know." "Sounds lonely," Marcus said without thinking, then winced. "Sorry. That was out of line." "No, it wasn't. It was honest." Victoria studied him with those ice blue eyes, and Marcus felt like she was seeing straight through him, past his worn uniform and calloused hands, past the careful walls he'd built around his heart. Lonely is exactly the right word. The heel took him 20 minutes to repair, 20 minutes during which something shifted between them. Victoria asked about his work, and he found himself telling her about the building's quirks, the way the heating system on the 4th floor made sounds like a dying whale, how the elevator to the parking garage played favorites and worked perfectly for some people while trapping others for fun. He made her laugh 3 more times, each laugh feeling like a victory, like finding treasure in an unexpected place. When he finished the repair, he slipped the shoe onto her foot without really thinking about the intimacy of the gesture. His rough hands wrapped around her delicate ankle, and time seemed to freeze. When he looked up, Victoria was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Good as new," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Well, maybe not new. But functional. Battlefield repair, we used to call it." Military, she asked, not moving her foot from his hands. Marines. 2 tours. He finally released her ankle and stood, stepping back to a professional distance. Another life. Victoria rose, testing the heel, finding it solid. I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Williams. Just doing my job, ma'am. Victoria. The word was soft, almost vulnerable. When we're alone, you can call me Victoria. Now, if you're finding yourself invested in where this is going, I want you to think about hitting that like button. Your engagement helps this story reach other people who might need to hear it. But more importantly, I need you to pay attention to what happens next, because this is where everything changes. Remember that board meeting Victoria mentioned? The one that would determine the future of the company? It's about to reveal a secret that Victoria Sterling has been hiding from everyone, a secret that will force her to choose between the empire she's built and the man who's about to become the most important person in her life. 3 weeks passed after that first meeting, 3 weeks during which Marcus found himself called to the executive floor with increasing frequency. A squeaky door hinge. A flickering light. A cabinet that wouldn't close properly. Each call brought him back to Victoria's orbit, and each time, their conversations grew longer, deeper, more personal. He learned that she'd built Sterling Enterprises from nothing after her father's business partner had embezzled everything when she was 22, leaving her family destitute and her father broken. He learned that she worked 18-hour days not because she loved money, but because she was terrified of ever feeling that vulnerable again. He learned that she hadn't taken a vacation in 6 years, hadn't been on a date in 3, hadn't let anyone past her carefully constructed walls since a failed engagement in her late 20s had left her convinced that love was a weakness she couldn't afford. In return, Marcus found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. He told her about Sarah, about the night he'd gotten the phone call, about how he'd had to tell a 2-year-old Lily that mommy wasn't coming home. He told her about the dark months that followed, the grief that felt like drowning, the moments when he wasn't sure he wanted to keep swimming. He told her about Lily's first day of school, her first lost tooth, her first nightmare about losing him too. She's terrified I'll die, Marcus admitted one evening, sitting across from Victoria in her office as the sun set over the city. Every time I'm late picking her up, she panics. Every time I get sick, she watches me like she's waiting for me to disappear. I don't know how to fix that fear for her. I don't know if I can. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. You can't fix it. You can only show her, every single day, that you're there. That you're not going anywhere. That loving someone doesn't always end in loss. Is that what you believe? Marcus asked. That loving someone can be worth the risk. Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with unspoken words. Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but her phone rang, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and her face transformed, becoming closed off and cold in an instant. I need to take this. It's about the board meeting. The vote is tomorrow. Marcus stood, gathering his tools, preparing to leave. But something made him pause at the door and turn back. Victoria, whatever happens in that meeting, you should know something. The person I've gotten to know these past few weeks, the real you, not the CEO, just the woman, she's remarkable. No matter what anyone in that boardroom says, don't forget that. He left before she could respond, missing the way her composure cracked, missing the single tear that traced down her cheek before she answered the call that would change everything. The vote happened the next morning. Marcus was working in the basement, replacing a faulty water pump, when his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. 2 words that made his blood run cold: they won. He didn't understand what that meant until he saw the news coverage on his lunch break. The board had voted to remove Victoria Sterling as CEO of her own company. The company she'd built from ashes, the company that bore her name, had been ripped from her hands by a group of investors led by a man named Richard Thorne. The same Richard Thorne who, as Marcus would soon learn, was Victoria's former fiancé. Now, this is a crucial turning point in our story, and I really need to know if you're feeling this. Drop a comment below, tell me what you think Victoria should do. Should she fight for her company? Should she walk away and start over? And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because the next part of this story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster that you will not want to miss. What Richard Thorne has planned for Victoria goes far beyond taking her company. He wants to destroy her completely. And Marcus Williams, a single father who barely belongs in this world of corporate warfare, is about to become her only ally. Richard Thorne was everything Marcus Williams was not. Old money, Ivy League education, a smile that could charm investors while hiding the calculating predator beneath. He'd been engaged to Victoria 5 years ago, back when she was still building her empire, still vulnerable enough to believe in fairy tales. What Victoria hadn't known then was that Richard had never loved her. He'd been positioning himself, playing a long game, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The engagement ended when I discovered he'd been stealing from the company, Victoria told Marcus 3 days after the board vote. They were sitting in her apartment, a penthouse that somehow felt empty and cold despite its luxury. She'd called him after hours, her voice brittle, asking if he could come by to look at a broken faucet. They both knew it was an excuse. They both knew she just didn't want to be alone. He'd been funneling money to his own offshore accounts for months. When I confronted him, he threatened to destroy me. Said he'd make sure I lost everything. I thought I'd stopped him. I thought the restraining order and the confidential settlement had been enough. I was wrong. Marcus sat beside her on the designer couch, close enough to offer comfort but maintaining the professional distance they both pretended still existed between them. How did he get enough shares to force a vote? He spent 5 years buying them through shell companies, puppet investors, anyone he could manipulate. The board didn't even know who they were really voting for until it was too late. Victoria's voice cracked. I built that company from nothing. I sacrificed everything for it. And now he's taking it all, and I don't know how to fight back. Without thinking, Marcus reached over and took her hand. The gesture was instinctive, born of years of comforting a grieving child, of learning that sometimes presence meant more than words. Victoria looked down at their intertwined fingers, then up at his face. Why are you here, Marcus? You barely know me. This isn't your fight. I'm not even your employer anymore. First of all, Sterling Enterprises still exists, so technically I still work there. I just now have a new boss who, from what I've heard, is a complete tool. He was rewarded with a small, surprised laugh. Second of all, I know you better than you think. I know you drink your coffee with exactly 1 sugar, which is not enough, by the way. I know you pretend to hate classical music but you hum Beethoven when you're concentrating. I know you check on the cleaning staff by name and remember their birthdays. I know you donated half your bonus last year to a children's hospital anonymously because you didn't want anyone to think you did it for PR. Victoria was staring at him now, her ice blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. How do you know that? The donation was completely anonymous. Because I'm a maintenance guy. We know everything. We're like the walls. People forget we're there, but we see it all. He squeezed her hand gently. Victoria, you're not the ice queen everyone thinks you are. You're someone who's been hurt badly enough to build walls, and I understand that better than anyone. But you don't have to fight this alone. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. Let me help. You have a daughter to worry about. You can't get caught up in my mess. Let me tell you something about my daughter. Every night before bed, I tell her the same thing. I tell her that the strongest people aren't the ones who never need help. The strongest people are the ones brave enough to accept it. He smiled softly. I'd be a pretty lousy father if I didn't practice what I preach, right? So here I am, Victoria. Accepting that I can't just walk away from you. And hoping you'll accept that you don't have to walk through this alone. The tears Victoria had been holding back finally fell, tracking silent paths down her porcelain cheeks. Without another word, she leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder, her body shaking with sobs she'd been suppressing for days. Marcus held her, one hand stroking her silky hair, saying nothing because sometimes silence was the greatest comfort anyone could offer. They sat like that until the city lights came on, until Victoria's tears dried and her breathing steadied, until the space between them had transformed into something neither of them could deny anymore. "Stay," she whispered. "Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone." Marcus hesitated. There were 1,000 reasons why this was a bad idea. She was vulnerable. He was a single father with responsibilities. They came from different worlds. But looking into her eyes, seeing the raw need there, he couldn't find the strength to walk away. "I'll stay. But Victoria, we need to talk about what's happening here. Because I'm not a casual person. I don't do this, whatever this is, lightly. And if we cross a line tonight, there's no going back." Victoria's hand came up to cup his face, her thumb tracing along his jaw. "That's exactly why I'm asking you to stay. Because you're not casual. Because with you, I feel something I thought I'd never feel again. Because when I'm with you, I don't feel lonely. And I need to pause here because what happens next is absolutely pivotal, and I want you to really understand the weight of this moment. Two people who have been hurt by life, who have built walls around their hearts, who have every reason to play it safe, are about to take a risk that will change everything. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever stood at a crossroads like this in your own life, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes we all need to be reminded that love is worth the risk. The first time Marcus kissed Victoria, it felt like coming home after years of wandering. Her lips were soft, tentative at first, as if she was testing whether this was real. But then his hand tangled in her silky hair, and she melted into him, and the kiss deepened into something hungry, something desperate, something that spoke of years of loneliness finally finding its end. "Marcus," she breathed against his mouth, and his name had never sounded so beautiful. They moved without speaking, communicating through touch, through gasps, through the electric connection that had been building between them for weeks. He lifted her easily, his aesthetic build carrying her as if she weighed nothing, and she wrapped herself around him like he was the only solid thing in her dissolving world. The bedroom was dark, lit only by the city glow streaming through the windows. He laid her on the bed gently, reverently, and took a moment to just look at her. She was stunning, ethereal, impossibly perfect. But it wasn't her beauty that took his breath away. It was the vulnerability in her eyes, the trust she was placing in him, the walls she was finally letting crumble. "We don't have to do anything you're not ready for," he said, his voice rough. "I meant what I said. I'm not here for one night." Victoria pulled him down to her, her lips brushing against his ear. "I know. That's why I want you here. Because I know this isn't ending when the sun comes up. Because I know you're real." What followed was unlike anything Marcus had experienced before. It wasn't just physical, though the physical was extraordinary. It was a merging of souls, a conversation without words, a promise sealed in sighs and touches and whispered names. When Victoria moaned his name, it was with a reverence that made his heart ache. When he told her she was beautiful, it was with a sincerity that made her cry. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I haven't felt this safe in years," Victoria whispered. "Maybe ever." "Me neither." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "Which is terrifying, if I'm being honest." "Why terrifying?" He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because I have Lily to think about. Because the last time I loved someone this quickly, this completely, I lost her. And I'm not sure I could survive that again." Victoria propped herself up to look at him, her long hair cascading over one shoulder. "You love me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and hopeful. Marcus thought about deflecting, about protecting himself, about all the reasons he should pump the brakes. But looking into her eyes, seeing his own hope reflected there, he found he couldn't lie. I think I've loved you since you laughed at my stupid joke about your shoes. I know that sounds crazy. I know we've only known each other for weeks. But somewhere between fixing that heel and holding you tonight, I fell completely. And it scares the hell out of me. Victoria's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she was smiling. It scares me too. But maybe that's how we know it's real. Because fake feelings don't have the power to scare us. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And in that moment, both of them allowed themselves to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd found something worth fighting for. But the real world has a way of intruding on perfect moments, and the next morning, reality came crashing in with a phone call that turned everything upside down. Marcus was making coffee in Victoria's kitchen, wearing his clothes from the night before, when her phone started ringing incessantly. Victoria emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair gloriously disheveled. She looked at the screen and froze. It's Richard. Don't answer it. Marcus moved toward her, protective instinct kicking in. You don't owe him anything. But Victoria shook her head. If I don't answer, he'll just show up here. He's that kind of person. It's better to know what he wants. She answered the call, putting it on speaker. What do you want, Richard? Richard Thorne's voice was smooth, polished, and absolutely dripping with malice. Victoria. I wanted to congratulate you on your termination. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? Years of planning, watching, waiting. And finally, I have everything that was supposed to be mine. The company was never supposed to be yours. You're a thief and a fraud. Such harsh words. But accurate, I suppose. However, I didn't call to debate ethics with you. I called to offer you a deal. Victoria's jaw tightened. I don't make deals with people who stab me in the back. Hear me out. I know you've been gathering evidence against me. Trying to find proof of my previous embezzlement. The confidential settlement we signed means nothing if you can prove fraud, right? So you've been digging. Talking to former employees. Tracking financial records. Marcus watched Victoria's face, saw the flash of surprise she tried to hide. Richard had guessed right. She had been trying to gather evidence. Here's my offer, Richard continued. Stop digging. Walk away from Sterling Enterprises completely. Sign over any remaining shares you hold. In return, I'll leave you alone. I'll let you rebuild somewhere else. I'll even give you a glowing recommendation, for whatever that's worth. And if I refuse? There was a pause, and when Richard spoke again, his voice had turned ice cold. Then I'll destroy everyone you care about. Starting with the maintenance worker you've been entertaining. Oh yes, Victoria. Did you think I didn't know about Marcus Williams? I know everything. I know about his daughter, Lily. Sweet girl. Goes to Lincoln Elementary, takes the bus home at 3:15. It would be terrible if something happened to disrupt that nice, stable life they've built. Marcus felt cold rage flood through him. This man was threatening his daughter. His innocent, precious little girl who had already lost so much. If you come anywhere near them, I will end you. Victoria's voice was shaking, but not with fear. With fury. I will burn everything you have to the ground. Oh, Victoria. Always so dramatic. You have until Friday to make your decision. Choose wisely. The line went dead. Victoria turned to Marcus, her face white. I'm so sorry. I never imagined he would, that he could even find out about you, about Lily. This is my fault. If anything happens to her. Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her tight even as his mind raced with fear and anger. This is not your fault. This is on him, all of it. And we're not going to let him win. What do we do? Marcus pulled back, meeting her eyes with fierce determination. We fight. We find the evidence we need. We take him down before Friday. And we keep Lily safe while we do it. That's impossible. 3 days to find proof of crimes he's been hiding for years? Maybe. Probably. But here's the thing about impossible. He gave her a small, crooked smile, the same sharp humor he used as armor and as charm. Impossible just means no one's done it yet. And sweetheart, you haven't seen what a determined single dad can do when someone threatens his family. What follows is a story of courage, of sacrifice, of two people from different worlds coming together to fight for what matters most. If you're still with me, if this story has captured your heart the way it captured mine when I first heard it, then I need you to stay tuned because the next section is going to push both Marcus and Victoria to their absolute limits. But remember, the darkest hour is just before the dawn. And the ending of this story is going to make everything worth it. The next 72 hours were a blur of sleepless nights, clandestine meetings, and the kind of investigative work that Marcus had never imagined himself doing. Victoria called in every favor she was owed, reaching out to former employees who had their own grievances against Richard Thorne, to lawyers who specialized in corporate fraud, to a private investigator she'd quietly kept on retainer for years. Meanwhile, Marcus arranged for Lily to stay with his sister in another city, a precaution that broke his heart but was absolutely necessary. Explaining to a 7-year-old why she had to leave without telling her she might be in danger was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. "Daddy, why can't I stay with you?" Lily had asked, her lower lip trembling. "Did I do something wrong?" Marcus had knelt down, taking her small hands in his. "Baby girl, you didn't do anything wrong. You are the best thing in my entire life. But Daddy has to help a friend with something important, and I need to know you're safe with Aunt Jenny. It's just for a few days. I promise." "Is it the pretty lady? The one from your work?" Marcus blinked, surprised. "How do you know about her? You talk different when you talk about her. Your voice goes all soft." Lily tilted her head, looking at him with wisdom beyond her years. "Mommy would want you to be happy, Daddy. She told me once that love is the strongest superpower in the world." Marcus had to blink back tears. "When did you talk to Mommy about that?" "In my dreams. She visits me sometimes. She said when I wake up, I should tell you she's okay. And that you should stop being so sad." He'd held his daughter for a long time after that, this impossible little person who carried both the greatest joy and the greatest responsibility of his life. And when he finally put her on the bus to Jenny's, he made a silent promise that he would come back to her. That nothing would stop him from keeping her safe. Victoria worked around the clock, barely eating, pushing herself to the brink. Marcus tried to make her rest, bringing her food, forcing her to take breaks, but her drive was unstoppable. This wasn't just about winning anymore. This was about protecting the people she loved, and that list had grown to include not just Marcus, but Lily too. "I've never even met her," Victoria said on the second night, exhausted and emotional. "But I already love that little girl. Because she's part of you. Because you love her. Is that crazy?" "It's not crazy. It's exactly how love works." Marcus pulled her close. "And for the record, I think she'd love you too. She already thinks you're the pretty lady who makes Daddy's voice go soft." Victoria laughed despite her exhaustion. "Smart kid. The smartest. Gets it from her mother." His voice caught, and Victoria tightened her hold on him. "Tell me about her. Sarah. What was she like?" And so Marcus did. He told her about Sarah's laugh, which could light up a room. About her terrible cooking and how she once set the kitchen on fire trying to make a birthday cake. About the way she sang off-key in the shower and read bedtime stories with different voices for every character. About her belief that every person had good in them, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. "She sounds amazing," Victoria said. She was. And losing her almost destroyed me. He was quiet for a moment. For a long time, I didn't think I could ever feel that way again. I wasn't sure I wanted to. Because feeling that much meant risking that much pain. And now? And now I've met someone who makes me want to risk it all over again. He kissed her forehead gently. "Sarah would have liked you. She had this thing about people's eyes. She said you could tell everything about a person by their eyes. And she would have looked into yours and seen what I see. Someone worth loving." They worked through the night, following paper trails and digital footprints, piecing together a puzzle that Richard Thorne thought he'd hidden perfectly. By the third morning, with only hours left before the deadline, they'd finally found what they needed. A former accountant who'd kept copies of everything. Offshore accounts that could be traced. Proof not just of past embezzlement but of ongoing fraud that implicated several board members in the coup against Victoria. "This is enough," the lawyer said, reviewing the documents. "This is more than enough. We can take this to the SEC, the FBI, and the courts simultaneously. Richard Thorne and half the board will be facing criminal charges." Victoria sagged with relief, years of tension releasing from her shoulders. Marcus caught her, holding her steady. "We did it," she whispered. "It's over." "Almost over," Marcus corrected. "We still have to file everything. And I have to go get my daughter." The look in Victoria's eyes shifted, becoming uncertain. "After this is done, after everything settles, what happens with us?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, this started as a crisis. We came together because of extraordinary circumstances. What if, when life goes back to normal, we realize?" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Marcus took her face in his hands, making her look at him. "Victoria Sterling, I fell in love with you over a broken shoe and a laugh you didn't expect to give. I fell deeper every time we talked, every time you let me see the real you. The crisis didn't create what we have. It just fast-tracked what was already inevitable. And when life goes back to normal, I'm going to wake up every morning grateful that I get to love you. That's what happens. That's the only future I'm interested in." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you. That's where you're wrong. You deserve everything. And I'm going to spend however long you'll let me proving it to you." They filed the evidence that afternoon, and by evening, federal agents had arrested Richard Thorne along with 3 of the board members involved in the fraud. The news spread like wildfire, and by the next morning, Victoria had been reinstated as CEO by the remaining board members, who fell over themselves to distance their involvement from the scandal. But there was one more thing Marcus needed to do before this chapter could truly close. He needed to introduce the 2 most important women in his life. Marcus drove to his sister's house with Victoria beside him, both of them nervous in a way that would have seemed ridiculous under different circumstances. He'd faced enemy fire in foreign countries. She'd built a billion-dollar company from nothing. And yet the prospect of a 7-year-old's approval had them both tongue-tied. "What if she doesn't like me?" Victoria asked for the 10th time. "She'll love you. Just be yourself. Being myself is what got me a reputation as an ice queen." Marcus laughed. "Your corporate persona is not yourself. Your real self is the woman who hums Beethoven and remembers the cleaning staff's birthdays. Just lead with that." Lily ran out of the house before they'd even parked, launching herself into Marcus's arms with the force of a tiny cannonball. "Daddy! Daddy, you're back. Aunt Jenny let me eat ice cream for breakfast and we watched movies and there was a cat next door and his name is Mr. Whiskers and I missed you so much." Marcus held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid reality of her small body. She was safe. Everything was okay. "I missed you too, baby girl. More than you know." He set her down gently. There's someone I want you to meet. Lily looked past him to Victoria, who stood nervously by the car. Her eyes went wide with recognition. That's the pretty lady. The one who makes your voice go soft. Marcus groaned while Victoria covered a laugh. Yes, that's her. Her name is Victoria. Can you say hello? Lily approached Victoria with the fearless curiosity of childhood, stopping right in front of her and staring up with those honey-brown eyes. Are you going to be my new mommy? The question hit like a thunderbolt. Victoria looked to Marcus in panic, but he just shrugged helplessly. Kids didn't beat around the bush. Victoria knelt down to Lily's level, taking her small hands. I don't know what the future holds, sweetheart. But I do know that your mommy is always going to be your mommy. Nothing and no one can ever change that. She loves you so much, even from heaven. I would never try to take her place. Lily considered this with serious intensity. But can you be my friend? Daddy says I can never have too many friends who love me. Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. I would love to be your friend, Lily. I would be honored. Okay. Just like that, Lily's face broke into a brilliant smile. Do you want to see the picture I drew of Mr. Whiskers? He has the biggest whiskers in the whole world. She grabbed Victoria's hand and dragged her toward the house, chattering endlessly about cats and ice cream and movies. Victoria looked back at Marcus, her eyes shimmering with tears and joy. Thank you, she mouthed silently. He just smiled, his heart fuller than it had been in years. This was his family, the one he thought he'd lost forever when Sarah died, rebuilt in an unexpected form. Imperfect and complicated and absolutely perfect in every way that mattered. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the balcony of Victoria's penthouse, now their penthouse, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. Lily was asleep in her room, the room Victoria had let her decorate however she wanted, resulting in walls covered with stars and unicorns and drawings of their little family. Victoria came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. She was wearing his old marine sweatshirt, her silky hair pulled into a messy ponytail, looking nothing like the formidable CEO the world knew and everything like the woman he loved. What are you thinking about? She asked, her chin resting on his shoulder. I'm thinking about shoes. Shoes? Specifically, a broken heel that changed everything. If that heel hadn't snapped, if I hadn't been the one on call that day, if you'd had a backup pair in your office like a sensible person. Victoria laughed, the warm sound washing over him like sunlight. I keep telling you, fate doesn't work that way. We would have found each other somehow. I'm convinced of it. Is that so? Absolutely. You were always going to be my person, Marcus Williams. The universe would have figured out a way. He turned in her arms, pulling her close. Your person. I like the sound of that. Well, you'd better. You're stuck with me now. Promise? Promise. She kissed him softly, then pulled back with a mischievous glint in her eye. Speaking of promises, there's something I want to ask you. She reached into the pocket of his sweatshirt and pulled out a small velvet box. Marcus's heart stopped. I know this is unconventional, Victoria said, her voice shaking slightly. I know traditionally the man is supposed to do this. But we've never been traditional, and I couldn't wait anymore. Marcus, you came into my life when I was at my lowest. You saw past my walls, past my reputation, past everything I'd built to protect myself. You showed me that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger than you ever knew you could be. She opened the box, revealing a simple titanium band, masculine and elegant. Will you marry me? Will you be my family, officially? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that choosing you was the best decision I ever made? Marcus was silent for a long moment, not because he was uncertain, but because he was trying to find words for the overwhelming emotion flooding through him. This woman, this incredible, fierce, beautiful woman, wanted him. All of him. The worn work boots and the grief and the little girl and the calloused hands. She wanted it all. Yes, he finally managed. 1,000 times yes. But I have one condition. Victoria's eyes widened with concern. What condition? Marcus grinned, reaching into his own pocket and pulling out an identical velvet box. Victoria gasped as he opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. You have to say yes too. I was planning to ask you today anyway. Great minds, right? Victoria laughed, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Obviously yes. We're ridiculous. We're perfect. They stood there on the balcony as the sun rose fully, wrapped in each other, new rings on their fingers, a future unfolding before them that neither had dared to imagine possible. Daddy? Victoria? Why are you crying? They turned to find Lily in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, looking at them with concern. Marcus scooped her up, bringing her into their embrace. We're crying because we're happy, baby girl. Victoria and I are going to get married. She's going to be part of our family. Is that okay with you? Lily's face lit up brighter than the sunrise. Really? Does this mean I get to wear a pretty dress and throw flowers? Can I have cake? Is Victoria going to live with us forever? Yes to all of the above, Victoria said, laughing through her tears. Lily threw her arms around both of them. This is the best day ever. I'm going to tell Mommy in my dreams tonight. She's going to be so happy. Marcus and Victoria looked at each other over Lily's head, and in that moment, they both understood. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. What they'd found together didn't diminish what came before, it built upon it. Sarah would always be part of their story. And somehow, in ways neither could fully explain, her love had made this new chapter possible. So here's what I want to leave you with tonight. Life has a way of breaking us, of taking away the things and people we love most, of convincing us that we're safer behind our walls. But the truth is, the broken places are where the light gets in. The cracks in our hearts aren't weaknesses, they're openings for new love to find its way to us. Marcus Williams walked into that executive office a man convinced he'd already had his great love story. He walked out with the beginning of another one. Not a replacement, not a do-over, but a beautiful continuation. Because that's what love is, isn't it? Not a finite resource that runs out, but an infinite energy that multiplies when we're brave enough to share it. Victoria Sterling built an empire to protect herself from ever being hurt again. But she discovered that the real protection, the real strength, comes from having someone to face the world with. Someone who sees your broken pieces and loves you not despite them, but because of them. And little Lily, the heart of this story, taught them both that love doesn't require forgetting. That we can hold on to the people we've lost while still making room for the people we're finding. That family isn't just about blood or biology, it's about the people who show up for you, who fight for you, who choose you every single day. If you've made it to the end of this story, I want you to take something away with you. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever walls you've built, whatever pain you're protecting yourself from, know that love is still possible for you. The right person, the right moment, the right broken heel at the right time, it's all waiting for you. You just have to be brave enough to let it happen. Life is too short to spend it alone. Too precious to waste on regret. Too beautiful to hide from. So take the risk. Make the leap. Let someone in. Because the greatest tragedy isn't losing love, it's never letting yourself find it in the first place. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you to believe in love, then I would be honored if you would subscribe to this channel. Not for me, but for you, so that stories like this can continue to find you when you need them most. Hit that subscribe button, join this community of dreamers and believers and hopeless romantics. Because the world needs more people who believe in love. And before you go, I have one question for you. I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. Whether you're in the United States or Brazil, India or Philippines, Nigeria or Japan, Australia or the United Kingdom, or anywhere else in this beautiful world, let me know. Because love is universal. It speaks every language and crosses every border. And tonight, we're all connected by this story. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. And remember, somewhere out there, your love story is waiting to begin. You just have to be brave enough to let it.